My name is Peter. I'm a PhD student in the CRUK Beatson Institute here in Glasgow, and I'm briefly going to give a talk as to why I decided to do a PhD and now what my life is like since I've started doing it. So my background, as you can probably tell by my accent, I'm Irish. So I did a Bachelor of Science in Biotechnology in Galway in Ireland. So that's our famous student union bar on student Christmas. So realistically, during my undergrad, I spent more time there than I did in the library. And then in my third year, I was afforded a great opportunity where I did a 3-month Erasmus mobility placement in Valencia in Spain. And this was kind of where I realized that, okay, maybe I like this research. You know, I like working in a lab. I kind of like the collegiate atmosphere. But at the end of my undergraduate degree, we were kind of faced with an interesting proposition of something that we'd been working on. And we considered launching a startup from it. But I know personally, I very quickly learned that the business world wasn't for me, and it was a lot of talking to people looking for funding who don't necessarily know what you're talking about. And it was too far removed from the science. I then briefly flirted with industry. I did an industrial placement with a company, and again, kind of felt like after the 3 months, I wasn't really being challenged enough, and it had all become very routine. So I decided to do an MSc in cancer research in Galway. And then at the end of my master's, I was kind of again left with an interesting crossroads where the supervisor that I had done my research project with, I was applying for funding with him, and we were kind of having a little bit of difficulty getting funding, even though I had a supervisor who wanted to work with me. So I kind of decided that maybe it was best for me to, you know, take the path less traveled and push myself a little bit and see what else was available out there. So I saw the perfect project advertised. Now, what I mean by the perfect project wasn't necessarily that this is what I always wanted to work on and this is what I, you know, went to bed dreaming of. But what I more meant was the perfect project was, you know, it was a field that I was definitely very much interested in. The skills that were advertised in the placement were pretty much exactly what I wanted to gain from my PhD. And it was 4 years fully funded, which is always very beneficial, as then you don't have to worry about the subsequent funding applications. So what was the application process like? So there was an online application where you had to fill out personal statements, and then with CV and references. I was then fortunate enough to be called for a phone interview. And then the phone interview went okay. So I was then asked to come to Glasgow in person and to do a full interview, which comprised of a presentation. And then because of the way my project is set up, I actually have 3 supervisors. So I then had to interview with 3 separate supervisors in one day, which was great fun. And I'd also like to just give a little bit of advice that I was given before I came over to my interview, was that if somebody is calling you to interview, they probably think that your credentials are pretty good, and they are more looking to see whether or not they're going to invest in you as a person. So it's quite important, you know, to really, you know, to try and make yourself come across well and come across as somebody that they would like to work with. Which I thought, you know, really focus on the personal element as well as the professional element. And of course, the most important thing is if you see a position advertised, contact the supervisor outside of the application, because they may be willing to talk to you, give you more information. And it also just kind of puts your name out there, you know, they may remember, and it shows that drive and that enthusiasm that's very important. So why do a PhD? Obviously, if you're doing it kind of just for status and title and because you want to be called a doctor, then I don't think that will really work, because you really do need to have a genuine interest. As it is, you don't have anybody telling you to do the work. It's all very self-motivated and you have to do it yourself. Try to pick a lab or a supervisor that suits you. You know, try and pick people that you can see yourself working with, because you're going to be spending a lot of hours in there over 3-4 years. So in my eyes, it would be preferable to at least do that with people that you fit in with and you get along with, and it makes your life a lot easier. And also, don't be afraid to chop and change field when you're applying for your PhD. Science skills are transferable. It's more about being able to show that, you know, you have sort of critical thought abilities and, you know, you're able to plan and move forward. So don't pigeonhole yourself too early. And if there is something different that you think you're up for the challenge, then definitely apply for it. So what's a PhD life? It's hard, and this is kind of a multifaceted hardness, as it's intellectually challenging as you're constantly, you know, pushing your knowledge and surrounding yourself with extremely intelligent people. But as Joyce kind of alluded to earlier, it's also emotionally very difficult because 99% of what you do doesn't work. So you really need to be a kind of person that looks at the glass always as half full rather than half empty. And again, something that I found out mostly through my supervisor was that managing your time really is like the most important skill. So if you look at the academic avocado chart, where it just constantly seems like work, and you know, the more hours you put in, the more you reap the rewards. But this isn't necessarily true, as learning to work smart as opposed to work hard can often be very important, particularly in the times we live in now with limited access to lab space. And then also the learning curve is extremely steep. I don't know why I put myself so high up this curve. I'm in the third year of my PhD now, and you're constantly climbing up and slipping down this curve, but you do have the support network to get up there. So what do I actually do day to day? I'm quite lucky in the fact that and it's something as well that I would recommend, is to try and learn as many, if it's a lab-based project, learn as many lab-based techniques as you can, as if you're constantly doing the same thing over and over again, you will get bored. So I do everything from RNA work and next generation sequencing to immunofluorescence microscopy to Western blots. And then in addition to that, I also panic and scream and have existential crises almost weekly. So again, that's perfectly normal. And then what do I actually do, or try to at least? So the main reason I picked my project was because I knew for a while that I wanted to work in bioinformatics and not just in wet lab biology. So I kind of decided, you know, this is the last degree qualification that I'm going to do, so I may as well pursue this interest now. And this has been really challenging because it was essentially a brand new set of skills that I decided to learn. But again, you're not on your own for these things. I was fortunate enough to be sent down to Cambridge to go on a course to learn how to do these things. And that was all funded by Cancer Research UK. So, you know, that was another brilliant opportunity. I got to meet researchers from all over the UK that were in a similar position to myself. And then the other thing that's very important to do is read papers and try and stay on top of the literature and on top of your reading, because you would be amazed how many good ideas you pull from other people's work, or, you know, asking a question in a slightly different method can often give you much better answers. So, you know, really do try and read. And then what's life like outside the lab? Well, this is probably the most atypical at the minute with the coronavirus, but hopefully that's coming to an end at some point in the near future. So what does your life entail outside of actual lab work and experiments? A lot of it is presenting your work and presenting your data, be it at, you know, institute-wide seminars or internally within your own lab or group meeting. You also attend seminars and talks from invited academics, which again is something that's really important to do, because, you know, you can often find jobs from these things if you see a lab that you might like to work in, or again, take ideas from your own research. And then probably one of the best aspects of working in academia is going to academic conferences and, you know, really getting to see world leaders talk about the stuff that you work on, you know, world leaders in their field, and then also you getting to present your work to them, which is intimidating, but it is actually really enjoyable because it really kind of puts things into perspective about how much you constantly have to learn and how long of a road it is. So lastly, I'd kind of like to just go through my PhD survival guide, or what I think is important to get through it. So firstly, it's a learning experience. Nobody expects you to know everything when you start or when you're applying. So, make sure you're not afraid to ask questions. My supervisor always says to me that it's only a stupid question if you ask it twice. In other words, don't waste my time. But, if you don't know the answer to something, just ask the question. It's so much easier. And really try and immerse yourself in, the academic way of life, and attend as many courses and conferences and stuff as you can. And then, you will get to know whether or not it is for you quite quickly. Establish a support network, both at work and outside of work. So I have a group of friends in the lab that if I want to go and I've messed up an experiment, I need to go and have a coffee and de-stress for a few minutes, I go and see them. But then I think it's also important, if you can, to try and have an escape route away from the lab and have people, that you can just go to the cinema or go to the pub or go for a walk or whatever it is. Remember, what you're doing is really cool, and you're probably the only person in the world that knows as much about it as you do. And there is a reason it got funded. And lastly, always remember that you got there on merit, and try not fall victim to imposter syndrome. And the reason that you were there is because you were the most suitable applicant, and you do deserve to be there.